Well, we've looked at a great many sites on Mars, ranging from south of the equator up to near the North Pole. We studied some 28 sites very intensively before choosing the prime site for the first spacecraft. That landing site is in a region called Crazy, which means land of gold. And it's 19.5 north and 34 degrees west. It lies at the mouth of the biggest channel complex. It looks like ancient riverbeds on Mars. And the landing ellipse is right out in front of the mouth of those channels. And that was the main reason for locating it there. We think it indicates that there may have been a great deal of water that flowed on the Mars surface at some time in the past. It couldn't exist there now, so it says the climate had to be very different when that water flowed. We also think this might have been a good place for life to have existed in the past. So we'll sort of be looking for fossil life at the mouth of these channels.
Dr. Harold Mazursky of the United States Geological Survey talking about one of the most important space missions in recent years, the start of the exploration of Earth's nearest planetary neighbor.
Mars has for centuries challenged the imagination
The
of
so-called
scientists
red
everywhere.
planet has been
Only
an
in
object
recent
of
years
mystery
has
for
the faraway
centuries.
planet begun
It's only
giving
in the
up a
last
few
few
of its
years
well-kept
that it's
secrets.
begun to
Manned
yield up its
spacecraft on the
secrets
Martian
to a
surface.
series of unmanned probes.
The United
that have
States is
flown by
sending
the
two
planet.
identical unmanned
The latest
Viking
of these
spacecraft to
are
Mars.
the two Viking spacecraft launched from Cape Canaveral last August, the first of which is now in orbit around Mars. But what
Each
makes
will land a
Viking
small
different from
scientific
previous
laboratory
probes
gently
is that
onto the
they actually descend through the thin Martian atmosphere and land on the planet's surface to carry out a series of highly sophisticated experiments. Experiments which may show that life in some form does, or once did, exist there. Retro rockets on the lander will slow its speed from 10,000 miles an hour to around.
its delicate instruments intact.
Having arrived safely, the lander will automatically
Opens a
point
tiny
its cameras
segment of the
down
surface
and take shots
where one of the
its own
spacecraft's
feet.
3 feet is resting.
Then it will raise its lenses to the horizon.
Then it shoots a
and
panoramic
hopefully
survey
record
of
the
whatever
first
is in view.
views of a Martian landscape.
Man's first close look at the Martian landscape.
These pictures and all other information
Both
will be
pictures
beamed
are
up
transmitted
to the
up to the
orbiting
mothership,
part of
the
which
Viking
will relay
orbiter,
the data back to
which
Earth
relays the
across
pictures
200
and also
million
data
miles
from
of
its own
space.
experiments back to Earth.
Scientists at the Viking Control Center at Pasadena, California, have already met the first snags. Early photos from the orbiting spacecraft have revealed the landing site as far more rugged than expected, and the descent to the surface has been postponed while other sites are considered.
Exploration of Mars by early mariners.
Most of our
photographed
information about
10% of the
Mars has
surface
come
in
from
brief
photographs
encounters
taken
as
by
they flew
America's
past the planet.
Mariner 9 over 4 years ago. This highly successful
But it is
space
Mariner
robot
9 that
made
explores all
discoveries
of
that
Mars and
revolutionized
reveals a planet
scientific
beyond
thinking
speculation.
about the planet. At first, it
The
revealed
size
a
of
body
Earth,
half the size
blanketed
of
by a
Earth,
gigantic
blanketed
dust
in
storm.
dense and violent dust storms.
For almost
For
2
2
months, scientists could see
saw
only
the
blurred
top
pictures
of
of the top of the storm,
with just a few vague
or the ice and
shapes
snow of the
poking
South
through,
Pole shining
like
dimly
the
through
ice
the
and
dust,
snow of the South Pole,
and several dark
or the dark
spots,
peaks of
apparently
mountains.
mountain peaks protruding up through the storm.
Then the clouds
And then
rolled
the
away
great clouds of
and
dust
exposed a
receded,
planet of surprising
and the long
features,
weeks of frustration
culminating
ended
in
with
one
one
great and
magnificent
exciting
and
discovery,
exciting word:
volcanoes.
volcanoes. The full year of
Mariner
operation, they
9
transmit
took
more than
7,000
7,000 photographs.
covering every part of Mars. And from these pictures, the
Of these,
scientists
over
painstakingly
1,500 are
constructed a
specifically
globe
taken to
of the
ensure
whole
that the
planet.
entire Martian surface
Every
will be
shot
mapped.
exactly matched and carefully positioned.
The photographs are carefully matched, precisely positioned on a globe, and skillfully fitted together.
This shadow on the planet's
This
surface
shadow
is
on the
cast
surface
by
of Mars
Phobos,
is cast
one of
by one of
Mars's
its two moons, Phobos, only
Phobos
about
was snapped
13
by
miles
Mariner
long.
2. It's only
The
13
second moon,
miles long.
Deimos, is even smaller.
Deimos, the other moon,
They are the
is even
darkest
smaller.
objects ever photographed in
They're
space.
the darkest objects ever
Primitive chunks of
photographed
rock
in space.
battered by meteoroids.
Battered, primitive
Their origin
rocks
is unknown.
whose origin is unknown.
This is the face of
Earlier,
Mars,
less
photographed by
precise
earlier
photographs
mariners.
of Mars had shown an
Here, a
apparently
visitor
dead
might
world,
think he was on our
barren
moon.
and cratered, similar
But this
to
planet
Earth's
too
moon.
was unchanging
But
and
Mariner
dead.
9 confounded this impression.
have been
From the
long since
photographs,
covered by immense
artists
flows of
created
lava.
impressions of typical Martian
Thin white
landscapes,
clouds form and drift
solidified
across the
lava
dark blue
flows,
sky.
wispy white clouds
In the
against
distance,
a
he would
dark
see the
blue
long,
sky,
gentle slope of a
and in
great
the distance,
volcano.
the gentle slopes of a huge volcano.
Intense
Violent
small
winds
dust
scour the
storms
cliff
scour
faces,
canyon walls
cleaving
into sharp
huge
ribs of
ravines
ancient
in the
rock.
canyon walls. And
Near
near
the
the
poles,
poles,
he would see a
extraordinary
great series
terraces
of
of
ancient
dust and
terraces,
snow
each
deposited by
layer
the wind.
composed of a mixture of
Each
dust
terrace
and
took
snow
thousands of
deposited by
years
the
to
wind.
form, each marking
Each
an
took
episode
thousands
in the
of years
planet's
to
development.
form. Each is an episode in the history of the planet.
But most staggering of all is
Model of
this
the volcano.
volcano, the largest
Its
so
base
far
measures
discovered in the solar
370
system,
miles across,
370
and the
miles
peak
wide
stands
and
15
15
miles
miles
above the
high.
plain.
NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, have made a dramatic model of it.
The flanks of the crater bear the familiar tortured patterns left by violent eruptions of molten rock. The walls drop steeply to a scarred, blackened floor. Frozen lava lakes marked with rough circles where the interior fires of the planet forced their way to the surface of the mountain. This is where the atmosphere of a planet is born, in searing heat that transforms solid primitive rock into thin vapors. Today the crater looks dead, frozen into a rigid page in a textbook on the evolution of a planet. This is not an old volcano. To a geologist it is young, and no one can say if it is alive or dead.
Observers
A
imagine
Martian mystery that's
that,
already been
there was
solved
plant
is
life
the
on
changing
Mars,
shades
and
and
that in local
colors on
spring
the
and summer
planet's
the plants
surface.
grew. They darkened
100
the
years
landscape
ago,
and
this feature
heightened
was thought to be
the
caused
coloration
by
of the landscape.
vegetation growth in the
Well,
spring season
and
gave rise to the famous
changes that
notion
we've
of
seen
canals
on Mars
Mars.
happened during the
In
course of the
fact,
mission
the
are
real
consistent
cause
with
is
this
the
kind of
wind's
idea.
continual redistribution
It
of
looks as
sand
if
and dust over the
the
surface.
seasonal changes of Mars are not due to biology, but due to weather.
Another huge feature
We
of
calculate
Mars
other
is a
face of Mars revealed by
3,000-mile
Mariner
long
9.
Rift Valley.
He would see
NASA have
fresh
made a
evidence of
model
a
of this
living,
too.
changing planet. In this model, the flat surface of a large Martian plateau is cut by the Great Rift. A smooth sloping ravine drops abruptly to the bottom of the canyon 4 miles below. The small peaks on the canyon floor were once part of the plateau surface. Today, this great fracture in the crust of Mars is 75 miles across. The original fault has been widened and shaped by various forms of erosion. Great landslides are triggered by quakes that shake crustal rocks. Wind-blown dust strips the receding canyon walls. Some side canyons may have been beaten by running water. Melting of underground ice, followed by slumping of walls, further erodes the Great Fault. This Rift Valley, of which we have seen only a small part, is so huge that it would span the United States. And the Grand Canyon of Arizona would fit inside one of the smaller tributaries.
This is also a NASA model of a 3-mile
This is
wide
a model
channel
of a section
north
of a
of the
3-mile
Martian
wide
equator.
channel north of the
It
Martian
seems to have
equator
been formed
that seems
by
to
a
be formed by a broad
of
flow
liquid water. On Earth, almost identical
similar to
drainage
drainage
channels
channels on
exist
Earth
that are fed by rainfall. It's the possibility
Parts of this
large
channel
quantities
also
of
show
water
evidence
on
of
Mars
wind
in the
erosion and
past
softening of
that have led
contours.
scientists to believe that life might have existed here and might still do so in some primitive form.
The islands appear to be similar to sandbars formed by rivers on
And
Earth.
it's the search for evidence of that
They might
life
be heavy
that will
gravel
be the most
or perhaps
important
solid
part
rock.
of the Viking mission. The lander is a robot
full-scale model of the
packed
lander
with
spacecraft.
extremely complex and
This
sensitive
device
equipment
contains a
to
10-foot
carry out
extendable
13
boom.
different experiments.
It reaches out, picks up a soil sample, and returns it to an instrument inside the spacecraft,
This
which will
core
then
is
perform
attached
3
to a
life search
10-foot
experiments.
extendable boom.
The
which can
cameras
reach
locate
out
the
and
best
scoop
spot to
up soil
trench
samples
and obtain soil
and deposit them
samples.
back inside the laboratory
Into
for
the
analysis.
spacecraft soil
The sample will be
processors
used
for delivery to
three
the instruments
basic
inside.
life search experiments. The first experiment
Will assume that
assumes
Martian life
is similar to Earth life. It uses Martian soil and Martian atmosphere. The soil is soaked in liquid containing a large quantity of water with a mixture of foodstuffs used by microscopic life on Earth. If Martian life forms eat the nutrients, they should excrete gases in the process, as do microorganisms on Earth. This will change the gases in the test cell. The changes will be detected and will be evidence of life processes.
And will be evidence of life processes.
The second experiment is half Martian
and half Earth.
The soil sample is moistened with only a little water, containing foodstuffs that scientists think exist on Mars. The foodstuffs are tagged with radioactive carbon-14. If life processes take place, then gases released in the process will contain the radioactive tracer and can be detected. The third experiment is based on Martian conditions. It uses Martian soil and Martian atmosphere with scarcely any moisture, to which are added radioactive carbon gases and simulated Martian sunlight minus the ultraviolet radiation. If Martian life forms are growing and multiplying in the Martian soil, it's assumed they would use some Martian atmosphere in the process. The atmosphere, tagged with carbon-14, should be metabolized into the bodies of the life forms. After allowing time for the life processes to take place, heat will be used to break down the solids into gases. Detection of carbon-14 in those gases will be evidence of a life process. The Viking
seismometer will record any ground motion or Mars quakes.
Any Mars quakes
Large volcanoes are active.
With two landers on the surface,
hundreds of miles apart.
Of any
The
volcanic
location as well as the magnitude of any crustal motion or volcanic activity may be plotted accurately.
A miniature weather station with needle-like sensors
measures the atmospheric
temperature near the surface,
the temperature near the surface,
speed and direction
and
of
the speed and direction of the wind.
Martian storms, winds up to
Winds
300
and dust
miles
velocities
an hour
up to
are not
300
uncommon.
miles per hour are possible on Mars.
Another
Still
piece
another
of
instrument
is the
called the gas chromatograph mass spectrometer,
which
tests the Martian soil for organic molecules.
Though it's
Although not a
exactly
life detection experiment, its
it
results
does
have important implications to the
for
search for life on Mars.
The soil is
heated
to break down the
breaking down complex organic compounds into simpler molecules for identification.
Analysis will show whether the
Analysis will
molecules
indicate whether they were related to biological processes
or were formed by purely physical means.
Deadly ultraviolet
Some
radiation from
scientists
the
have
sun
speculated about
to
amazing
penetrate to the
life
surface.
forms on Mars, such
Life
as
forms on
snail-like
Mars may have
creatures with silica shells to protect them
against the
from the
radiation.
deadly ultraviolet rays that strike
know
through
that Mars is
Mars's
very
thin
dry.
atmosphere.
Life
Other
forms
life
on
forms
Mars
may have evolved
may have
ways
developed
of surviving
special
in the
ways of
planet's
preserving their
extremely
water
dry
content.
climate
And
by
those
preserving
forms
their vital
may
water
not look familiar
content.
to us.
Some forms may have leaf-like
I can even
structures,
imagine
possibly with
forms
unusual
of life
colors,
having
that could be
leaf-like
recorded
structures
by Viking's
oriented by
new
the
color
sunlight,
cameras.
possibly of unusual colors. This is one of the reasons that we want to have color in our cameras.
It's even been suggested that larger
I could
life
imagine
forms
a
could
kind of
exist
plant.
that live not on
A
liquid
plant is
water,
perhaps how
but
one
on
would
the ice
identify
of the
it.
permafrost
That is indeed
layers
an ice
below the
eater,
surface.
with
They'd be
fine root-like
categorized
structures,
as crystophages,
searching
ice
not for
eaters.
liquid water, but searching the permafrost, reaching down to get at that ice.
Even more mind-boggling
Another
is the
solution to the
suggestion of a
problem of water
rock-eating life
might
form,
be an
a
organism that eats rock,
petrophage, a
one that
creature that literally picks up the rock,
eats the
extracts
water, and
water
spits out
and
the
minerals
rock.
from it,
An
and
imaginative
then
idea,
spits out the
but
pieces.
not wholly ridiculous. We don't know of such creatures on Earth, but
But
it is
whether any of
possible,
these
and people
bizarre
have
creatures are
speculated along
discovered,
those
or
lines.
whether Experiments reveal only minute organisms, Dr. Mazersky is convinced that even more elaborate spacecraft will be sent to Mars.
Yes, there's been a great deal of discussion about what's the next step. And of course the biologic type would like to characterize exactly what that life is and how it functions and whether it's like terrestrial life or different. So we would send a much more sophisticated biologic package, maybe something that would analyze for amino acids, say.
And what about different places on Mars? Have you got any plans to explore Mars thoroughly?
Well, there are two ideas. One is that the life forms would be microscopic and the wind would blow them every place, so any place would be as good as any other. The other idea is that life exists in oases and you'd have to go just to the right spot. So we'll hope in the future to land a rover that can go look for the Mars oasis and investigate there.
What might this rover be like, a sort of unmanned moon car?
Well, there are several different ideas. One of them is to have a little tiny vehicle that you let off and it runs around. The other one is to put wheels under the spacecraft, just have something that looks very much like the present Viking and put little caterpillar treads and have it run across the countryside.
Life on Mars, but whether that life
If
has a
life
separate
on
origin
Mars,
from
no
our
matter
life,
how
life
simple,
as we
is
know it.
found, it will be man's most
told us
momentous
where to
discovery.
look.
It will mean that
The
life
landing
certainly
sites for Viking
exists
are
on
now
countless other planets
one major
too.
objective is to search
Man
for
will
life
know
in
at
the Martian
last
soil.
that he's not alone